Good day, boys and girls. Uncle Ronald is again so glad to be here with you. And we're going to start today about a story about a boy called Hudson Taylor. And people looked at him because he wanted to do something very special. He wanted to do something very wonderful. But people looked at him and said to him, "But you're just a child. You're so small and you're so sick. How can you do that?" But we're wondering, what did Hudson Taylor want to do? And did he do it? We will find out. Now, every evening, Hudson and his family will sit around the table, they will eat and talk to each other. And Hudson loved listening to his father that talked about the far and strange country of China. He especially loved listening to his father when he got all excited, and they say he had such a booming voice. Because then Hudson's father would say, "Why don't they send more missionaries to China? There's millions and millions of people, millions and millions of Chinese that never heard about Jesus. Why don't they send more missionaries to China?" Now, when Hudson was 5 years old, he said to his father, "Father, when I'm going to be big, when I'm going to be a man, I am going to go to China and I will speak to the people there about Jesus." Now, Hudson's father just looked at his mother and they smiled when they heard Hudson saying that he will go to China. Because before Hudson was even born, and this is so special for Uncle Ronald, Hudson's parents prayed to Jesus and said to Jesus, "Jesus, if you would give us a son, we will educate him, we'll make sure that he will be a missionary that will go to China. We will send him to China." But they realized God must have another plan for Hudson. Because Hudson can't go to China. Because Hudson is so small. Hudson is so sick. They were sure Jesus has another job, another special work for Hudson to do. Because in their eyes, he couldn't go to China. Yes, Hudson was so sick that he never went to school. The first time that he went to school was when he was 11. But before that, he had very good teachers, because his father and his mother, they taught him all the subjects that boys at that time were taught in school. And they also taught him about Jesus, how to read his Bible, how to pray, how to think about Jesus. Because they loved Hudson very much. Now, Hudson loved reading. Do you love reading? Uncle Ronald loves reading. I hope you do love reading. And he loved reading, and during the day he will read aloud to his mother while she was washing the dishes, sewing. He would be reading a book for her. Now, one day he was reading a book and he loved this book. And he was thinking, "Oh, I wish I could read this book even tonight in bed." But at that time there were no lights or flashlights, and his mother, when she came to say good night to him, would also take the lamp out of the room. So he was thinking, how can I read tonight this book in bed? Then he got a very good idea. He will go and get some candles, and he will put it in his pocket. And when he's in bed in the evening, he will light the candles and read the book in his bed. Now that evening, a visitor came. And Hudson thought, this is my chance. Now I can go and get the candles. So he ran and he went to the place where the candles were, and he took the candles, put it in his pocket. And then he walked into the room and he said to everyone, good night, sleep tight. I'm going to go to bed now. But the visitor, he took and he grabbed Hudson, put him on his lap. But Hudson didn't really want to sit on this visitor's lap, but he didn't want to be rude, so he just sat there. But the big problem was, the visitor was sitting right next to the fireplace. And Hudson was getting warmer and warmer, and he was getting more worried and worried, because he was thinking, the candles in my pocket, it's going to melt. Now Hudson was so glad when his mother said to him, Hudson, I think it's time for you to go to bed. And he said good night to everyone, and he ran to his room. And a few minutes later his mother came into the room, and there was Hudson standing, hands full of melted candle wax. And his mother looked at him, and she looked so sad, because she knew that Hudson disobeyed her, because he may not read in his bed. And Hudson was looking at his mother, saw how sad she looked, and he started crying. And he said that was a lesson that he never forgot. Now at that time in England, boys at the age of 13 went to go and work. And Hudson went also with his father to his father's business, and he started working at his father's business at 13. And his father taught him how to mix and make and measure medicine. Now Hudson liked his work, but he was at that time a very sad little boy, because he didn't like reading the Bible anymore or praying. He didn't like listening to his father in the evenings around the table, listening to him reading the Bible and talking about China and missionaries. Now the reason was because Hudson heard about Jesus. He knew about Jesus, but he didn't really know him. He didn't know him personally. He just heard about Jesus. And all that Hudson could think of is making money, buying a horse and buying a beautiful house one day. It's almost like someone these days, if they can only think about buying a house, buying a beautiful car, making lots of money. Now when Hudson was 17, he had also had a holiday, and there was no one at home. His mother was away, and he was walking around in the house and looking at his father's books, trying to find an interesting book. But he couldn't find anything. And then he saw there in one of the corners a basket full of little Bible books. Now Hudson walked over to the basket full of little Bible books, and he looked through it and saw one that looked interesting for him. And he went to the barn and started reading the book there. And as he was reading through the book, there was the words, the finished work of Christ, where Jesus was on the cross and he was calling out, it is finished. And Hudson was thinking, what does this mean? Jesus calling out and saying, it is finished. And he realized it is Jesus saying, I have the work that I came to do, I have finished it now. I was here punished for the people's sin, for all those things that they think, say and do wrong. I was punished for that now, and my work is finished. It is done. And Jesus dying on the cross and being rose again from the grave 3 days later. And as Hudson was thinking about this, he realized, but he doesn't have to do anything to be saved. Jesus did everything. Jesus said, it is finished. And just there and then, Hudson fell on his knees and prayed to Jesus and said to Jesus, thank you, Jesus, that you love me so much, that you finished the work, that I can be forgiven for all the things that I think, say, and do wrong that displeases you. Oh, Hudson was so excited. He jumped up and he ran to the house because he wanted to go and tell someone about just what happened now. And there was Amelia, Hudson's sister. And he said to her, Amelia, I've got good news. I've got good news. My sins are forgiven. I've said to Jesus, I want to be his child. But Amelia, you must promise me that you won't tell Mother, because I want to tell Mother myself. And Amelia promised Hudson that she won't tell Mother. But she was also rejoicing and so full of joy of the decision that Hudson made, because Amelia at that time was praying every day and saying to Jesus, Jesus, my brother Hudson doesn't know you. He doesn't love you, doesn't read his Bible, doesn't pray to you. But please come and change his life. And here was Hudson saying he loved Jesus. Oh, Amelia was so glad because Jesus answered her prayer. Now later that evening, Hudson's mother came back and he ran out to his mother and said, Mother, I've got good news. I've got good news. And his mother said to him, I know, Hudson. I know all about your good news. I was singing and praising God all the time about your good news. And Hudson said to his mother, but how do you know about my good news? Amelia. Mother, Amelia promised me that she wouldn't tell you. Did Amelia tell you? She promised. But Hudson's mother said, no, Hudson, Amelia didn't tell me. But during this day, I had time and I went to pray and I spoke to Jesus and I said to Jesus, Jesus, my son Hudson doesn't know you. Please, won't you come and change his life? And Hudson's mother said, as I was praying and praying, I just came to almost like the assurance that Jesus spoke to me and said, I have heard your prayer. I have heard your prayer. I will change Hudson's life. And from that time, I was just praising and saying thank you to Jesus. Isn't it wonderful, boys and girls? Because as Hudson was walking around looking for a book to find, looking it in the basket full of Bible books, Hudson's mother was praying. As he went to the barn and started reading about Jesus' life and Jesus saying, it is finished, Hudson's mother was praying. And Jesus answered Hudson's mother's prayers. Now Hudson was so full of joy, and he and his family went every Sunday morning to church. And just after church, he and Amelia, his sister Amelia, would go to people that didn't come to church that day and go and speak to them, find out how it's with them, and speak to them about Jesus. Now, as Uncle Ron said, Hudson loved Jesus and loved reading the Bible. and he always wanted to do the right thing. But sometimes he forgot to do the right thing, and then he felt so sad because he knew that he made Jesus very sad. And once he said to Jesus, "Jesus, I will do anything for you. I will go anywhere for you if you will just please give me the strength to help me to do the right thing so that I won't make you sad anymore." And he said, Hudson said, that it is as if Jesus answered his prayers and said to him, "Then Hudson, then go for me to China. Go for me to China." That is all that Hudson wanted to do, was to be a missionary, to go to people that never heard about Jesus, to go and speak to them about Jesus. And Hudson realized, well, if Jesus wants me to be a missionary, then I must start preparing myself immediately to become a missionary. So early in the mornings, when it was still dark, he would get up and start reading his Bible, and trying to understand the Bible more and more so that he could speak to the people about Jesus. He started learning Chinese because he said, well, if I'm going to go to China, I need to speak to the people in their language about Jesus. So he started reading and learning Chinese. And he said, well, if I need also to become strong and fit, so he exercised each day so his body could become stronger. And he even thought about that. So missionaries must go and they must be willing to sleep anywhere, even on the ground. So Hudson got for himself a very hard bed so that he could start sleeping on it and getting used to sleeping on like a hard ground. Then he heard about a minister in his town that had a book about China. And Hudson wanted to learn so much about China, so he decided he's going to go to this minister and ask him, "Can I borrow this book, please, about China?" "Why do you want to borrow this book about China?" the minister asked. "Well," Hudson said, "it is because Jesus wants me to go to China to speak to the people there about him." "And how are you going to get to China?" the minister asked. "Well, I don't know," Hudson said, but if Jesus wants me to go to China, he will make a way for me and he will help me to get to China." So the minister gave Hudson the book, and Hudson borrowed the book, and he went home and he immediately started reading the book. And as he read this book about China, he learned about that there were many poor Chinese and they got sick and they couldn't pay for medicine. And he realized, well, if he wants to go to China, maybe it will be good if he would study medicine, if he would become a doctor, so that he could help poor Chinese. Because as he will be helping them with their sickness and helping them to get healed, he could start speaking to them also about their greatest problem, and that is sin, and how Jesus can save them from their sin. Now, where am I going to learn about medicine? Hudson thought. And he started praying to God and asking him, please help me. And then God answered Hudson's prayer, because Hudson heard about a Christian doctor, a doctor called Richard Hardy, and who lived in the city hall, that needed a helper. And Hudson went to this doctor and asked him if he could become the helper, and the doctor said yes, he can can become his helper. He can help the doctor. And Hudson left for the city hall, and there he learned so many things about medicine, because the doctor was a very intelligent person and also a very nice person. But there was one thing that God wanted to teach Hudson here in the city hall with the doctor. A very important lesson. But if you want to hear about this lesson that God taught Hudson, you must come back again next week.